The following is a conversation with Daniel English. Daniel is the current Director of Football for Corduff FC, one of the largest schoolboy clubs in Dublin. Daniel currently holds a UEFA A licence, and today we talk about all things coaching within Ireland, his roles and responsibilities as a Director of Football, and various other topics that influence Irish football. We hope you enjoy. As the first month of the year has come to a conclusion, my assumption is that a lot of your New Year's resolutions are based around saving more money or just generally being better with your finances. If you need an extra hand in developing better behaviours and planning for your future, please reach out to our podcast sponsor, Financial Planning Matters. You can reach them at www.fpms.ie. Niall and the team will help you craft your financial future in relation to your goals.
Let's go. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you.
Fantastic to have you on. Before we kick into a little bit, obviously, talking about underage football and your role and whatnot, give us a little bit of background of who you are, kind of what you do, obviously, with Corduff, and anything else you think might be important to address before we get going.
Yeah, perfect. So, obviously, Daniel English, 30 years of age. Have a love of football since I'm 6 years of age. It started in league slip with Comfy. So I played with Comfy from when I was 6 years of age till I was 10, 2003, moved to Navan. Played at a couple of clubs in Navan, like Parkville, Johnstown, settled with Toro by the time I was under 12. Played with Toro right the way up till I was 21, 22 years of age. Started coaching then in 2013. Actually, one of my friends was coaching in Trim Celtic. I got asked to watch a team for a training session. Their coach didn't show up or something, and ended up being stuck with that team. Coach never came back, so I got roped in that way. And then I started doing it. I hadn't a clue what I was doing when I started. I was just like, pick your team. What position do you play? I was saying that to the lads and picking that, and really didn't know what I was doing. As obviously the matches and training sessions go on, I really started enjoying it. Didn't do any coaching badges for the first 3 years. Was just kind of winging it. Really good club though, Trim Celtic. Really enjoyed it. So as I got to 2016, with football, I wanted to progress in terms of obviously pushing on as a coach, and kind of felt you were slightly limited in meat at the time. So I went up to Bowes, done the underage in Bowes, done 6 months there. Kind of wasn't overly for me. I had started my B license at the time, then went to Cherry Orchard. One of my friends that actually met through the course had, mentioned about going over, so went over there. My dad actually came with me. He wasn't coaching at the time, but had coached me right from under sixes up until senior, so he came in with me, and started there. Stayed at Cherry Orchard for a year and a half. Completed my B license. Ended up then after that going to Shamrock Rovers. I was at Rovers for 10 or 11 months. The email came up about the Corduff job, and went for that in kind of June 2019, probably September 2019, and then it started in October 2019. So my coaching badges I started in 2016. Started PDP1, got the bug by Christmas that year, had, done the C license at the time, then waited a year, done the B license, and started my A in 2019, and it was delayed with COVID, so I finished that in in the last 15 months.
Nice. That's an outrageous summary, by the way.
Yeah.
Did you script that? That was outrageous.
No.
That was month by month perfectly laid out. Very nice. So give us an idea of what your current role is in Corduff specifically.
Yeah, so my current role is Director of Football. For really in simple terms, it's when I first started was kind of looking at the way the coaching was done in the club, where we were at the time, what can we improve. When I started, a lot of the coaches hadn't done any courses. A lot of the teams, really good teams there, some brilliant coaches, but there wasn't probably as much structure as the club would have liked at the time. So that was the first thing, obviously, kind of assess where we are coaches wise, what's the standard of coaching, where are we coaching badge wise. You looked at that kind of in depth, done a review of that. Then in terms of teams, kind of what way do they play, what way have they played, and what way do we want to play in Corduff. And in terms of my role, I would make a point of it, I want to be in doing the training sessions with the teams. From certain clubs I've been at over the years, I've kind of looked at roles that people were in, and director roles, or whatever sort of stuff that was, and I got good learnings from a lot of coaches over the years, and then I got some stuff of what not to do, and I kind of always felt that I never wanted anyone to say that Daniel English is director of football, you know, he doesn't really coach the kids during the week or is never really on the pitch side, because it's something that I always felt that someone in that role should be doing, especially at underage. I know professional leagues is different, but it just, I think if you're in a role like that, you have to lead by example. So yeah, in Corduff, that's kind of what I aim to do, you know, week in, week out there. Of course, there's times where you have to sit back and watch stuff, but primarily I'd like to be doing, you know, between 6 to 10 sessions a week up there.
Nice.
Just a personal preference of mine. I think from over the years, it's, you know, something that I always said I would do if I ever was kind of lucky enough to get one of them roles. So yeah, that's kind of mainly what I do during the week. And then of course throughout the year you've different stuff that pop up, you know, organising coach ed with the FEI or in-house. You know, at Christmas time, January, we do in-house games, kind of assessing what levels players are at. And then sometimes at Christmas you may move players up levels or down. Mainly it's probably done in May, June time, coming towards the end of the season. Then throughout the year, you know, organising tournaments, camps, all that sort of stuff that happens with the club. That's primarily what the role would involve. Fairly full on, but I love it. Like I wouldn't change anything about it, to be honest.
It's quite a substantial workload, isn't it? Do you think people from the outside probably don't understand the amount of work that goes into it?
Oh yeah, big time. Like, you know, it's, and I wouldn't have really before, like, but I think there's so much stuff that pops up throughout the week. If it's, you know, in the evenings or the mornings, you know, people texting you, starting getting messages 6, 7 in the morning, or the evening about pitches or players or different issues that pop up. And, you know, trying to explain that obviously to your family as well when you start a role like that. Like if, you know, you're at home and your phone is buzzing and, you know a coach is stuck at a pitch side or in a training session or that sort of stuff. But it's kind of how you manage that as well. Like, you know, if you kind of let it eat into your personal time 24/7, which I did at the start, you're up in the club kind of 7 days a week, you'd get burnt out. Whereas if you manage your workload and, you know, you're kind of, you know, it's small things like your phone. Like I put my phone on do not disturb at 10 o'clock. Obviously, you know, get back to messages in the morning and stuff. And I kind of make a point of when I get into work, I, you know, start my working day, and then you might at lunchtime check your messages, and obviously throughout the day you might have to take calls. But it's kind of about learning the balance between personal life, football life, your day-to-day job, and finding that balance.
How long did that take? So you take up any kind of coaching role, time-wise is substantially difficult, but a director of football role, obviously you've coaching side as well as everything else that you need to deal with and you're accountable for, to be quite honest, and that's very difficult to do. But how long did it take you to be mindfully aware of my time, like my personal time is very precious, and for me to be as good as I can be as a director of football, you need some time away from it as well. So when did you find that balance? How long did it take?
Probably 3 years into the role, because I was just up there. Like there was so much stuff you were trying to do. So like if a coach left the team, you were trying to coach that team to keep them going to the end of the season, or if there was people missing, and you know you'd be hopping in sessions here and there. And then the difficulty is when you do that, and you've say if I go up on a Tuesday and I plan to work with the under 10s at say 5 o'clock, the under 9s at 6, or the under 14s at 7. If you've promised them teams you'll do that, the next thing someone doesn't show up and you're stuck in doing other sessions, that just gets in on top of you. So you have to find a way to, like we came out with the coaches, that listen, if you can't make your session the day before, you need to let us know, not on the day, an hour or two before training, because it affects your role of helping other teams and coaches in the club. In terms of me, like I just always feel like you can push on more in the club or your day-to-day job. So only kind of in the last year I kind of said you need to balance or you get burnt out. Like, and it's, it did take me, I'm not going to say it took me like 3 months. It was definitely 3 years of not doing too much as such, but not taking personal life, like small things, like, you know, getting out with, you know, your partner on the weekend or your family, and, you know, just balancing that time. And, you know, definitely taking, you know, your 1 or 2 days off during the week, and then on a Saturday or a Sunday, do a Saturday or a Sunday and rotate it, like stuff like that, because otherwise you're in the club 6-7 days a week, and then you don't have time for, you need to set time actually for planning as well, planning forward and training blocks or whatever you need to do. So it's finding that balance and that. So, but it was definitely 3 years in, like it's only kind of in the last year or so.
Yeah, it makes sense, because we obviously experienced that a lot from coaching, but even from a business perspective, like we had, luckily this year compared to probably other years, this Christmas we had, I'd say, a week of, right, we're post Christmas and we're kind of just easing back into New Year, where we kind of were consciously saying you kind of got a week where you don't have to be anywhere, you're not answering to anyone, and that week alone just gives you so much time to plan, because you can be stuck in robotic and you can be busy, but it's not that productive, where you're just doing the same thing on repeat and nothing new comes, especially from a coach's perspective. So that creativity can leave very, very quickly if you're stuck in that same routine and rut. So like, yeah, we've experienced that big time, where you need to take either an hour at the weekend or a full day at the weekend, and sometimes maybe even both days, just to not be doing something, because it kills you, doesn't it? Like, the productivity wise, it's nearly impossible to be fully functioning and be the best version that you can be, especially in a club like as big as Corduff is. I'd say that's very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's as well. It's concentrating on yourself. Like, I've been in my back playing kind of 5-a-side since last September. Like, I played Monday night now and a Thursday. So one is at 8, the other one's at both of them are 8 o'clock. So like, you can go to the club, do the sessions till say 7:30, go and play your Astro, get your kind of physical activity in as well, which you completely neglect if you're in a role like that 9 times out of 10. And
100%.
That's sort of stuff I'm trying to do. Then obviously getting out, walking the dogs, going back to the gym kind of in December. But that's stuff that you always put in the back burner. And I think concentrating on yourself, since I've started doing all that the last 2 months, like your mood just improves and your productivity is a lot higher than if you're just kind of slogging it through, trying to get everything done at once.
Absolutely.
Big time.
With Corduff and your role as director of football, we've had a couple of DOFs on, and from your initial part of that conversation and from what the other conversations I've had, I've noticed that it seems to be like a Stretch Armstrong, to have that little doll back in the day, where you're just being pulled in all these different directions and the rips and the tears happen. Is that really a productive way to be the main focal point of a football club, if that makes sense? Because I think, as you alluded to there, like a lot of the success stories in England around like Cat 1 academies, or even just, let's say, English clubs in general, just as like a cross reference, the director of football would be a role that is way more, I would say, not between the white lines. It's very much in the back, between liaising with parents, probably negotiating player moves, and potentially then as well focusing more on strategy and session development and with coaches. Do you think that's ever going to shift in the next 5 to 10 years, or do you think you have to be actively on the pitch every week?
In underage football, for me and like Corduff, I think the kind of the head coach of a club should be on the pitch leading by example. Something that I kind of want to start doing now is not assessing coaches, but every kind of 6 weeks, start noting down sessions. And I think so I will probably do 3 weeks in Corduff on a pitch, and then I'll take a week of just kind of doing a few notes on sessions we've done, on coaches I've done, and kind of then being able to give feedback. And that's something at the moment I just don't have time to do. But something that I wanted to do in 2024, and probably delegate better. But I think like in terms of academies and stuff, I think they probably are pulled in all different directions, same as schoolboy clubs. And I think I know in particular of one of my friends that was director of football that actually had stepped down from fairly kind of high profile club because he was just given all the admin stuff and dealing with parents, all that sort of stuff. Like I don't deal with parents really anymore unless it's about helping a child develop. Because sometimes in the past, like if you think it cut off like 450 kids, I was getting loads of messages and phone calls off parents before if they didn't like the way a coach spoke to a kid, which completely fair enough, go to the club about that, or they didn't like if the child wasn't selected or bullying or whatever it was. I was getting calls like you get probably 10 15 calls a week, and they were kind of all coming to me, and at the start I was trying to deal with all that. But I suppose about delegating, like you need to have in your football club, you need to have obviously your main committee, people on that role have to have the roles they stick to, then obviously director of football, something that we have in Corduff as well that works quite well as a football committee. So one of the guys on that is on the main committee. Two of the guys are on that in the main committee. There's one head. There's 5 on that committee. And anything I want to do to improve in Corduff, if it's, putting on extra sessions in, say, the Dome or Blanchardstown, for example, or if it's, just different football programs you want to start, I would go to the football committee. They'd bring it to the main committee. You'd approve it that way. But stuff like getting the VO camera in or something like that, I'd show the benefits. They would go have their meeting, come back to me, and that sort of stuff. And then we dealt with kind of the child welfare officer. So Ellen Ryan is in Corduff, so she deals with all the parents. Now I don't deal with them unless someone comes and asks for a little hand with something there. If it's football related, no problem. I'll chat to a parent all day, but just not dealing with stuff that's not really to do with my role.
So defined roles.
Yeah, you definitely
boundary
need
setting.
defined roles. Like I think in the club, if you're a director of football, you need to know exactly what your role is and what you're meant to do. And if you're on a committee or you're, coach in the club knows what he's meant to do 9 times out of 10. You may have to reinforce it throughout the year and say what you expect of them and what you expect them to do with the kids. But everyone needs to have a role. I think in director of football, they definitely get pulled in all different directions. From just ones I've talked to over the years, and it's something probably that because the person's in that role, they just think, oh, Daniel will do it, or Morgan will do it, or Gary will do it. That's it. Whereas if you do that, that's probably why a lot of them don't probably last past the year or year and a half mark, because they probably get fed up with it.
Yeah. One of our mottos in China 1-to-1 is play long-term games with long-term people. So that's one of the reasons why we decided to partner with Financial Planning Matters. Although planning for your future is a long-term game, you need to do it with long-term people. Even me personally, with working with Niall and the team, there's no hope in hell I would have been able to actually plan my financial future without the assistance of Financial Planning Matters. So please, I'm reaching out to you today. If you are experiencing the same things that I was experiencing, like struggling to create an emergency fund, struggling to actually understand what investing is, struggling to even understand how to get money from a bank account into an investment fund, tiny things specific to your use case, even other examples like trying to plan for college. My advice to you now is to reach out to the Financial Planning Matters team to make sure you take control of your financial future, whatever that is to you. You can do this at www.fpms.ie to reach out to the team today.
Yeah, interesting. I'm glad I asked that then, because that's a good understanding of the different roles. So on the football side in Corduff, what do you think yourself and the club have done very well in the last 4 years since you started?
I think since the coaching side of it, like there was a lot of good coaches in Corduff. There was a lot of guys that people don't like change as well. That's one thing when we started in Corduff, when we wanted people to go into courses, and when we were talking to coaches about this is what we want done with certain teams, even things like regrading, moving kids up and down levels wasn't done probably that much with a lot of the teams, which is so important. It has to be done. And in terms of people, giving up their time to do coaching badges, we came across it all at the start. So I'm not doing that. I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm not going. But we'd people. I always look at it like if you want to go and be a carpenter, you have to go and do your carpenter course. If you want to go and do journalism, you have to go and probably do 4 years in college. If you want to coach football, because I don't care if you played League of Ireland, you play Premier League, you need to go and do your coaching badges, because you can know how the game is, how it's run week in, week out. But there's a way of coaching kids that are under 8s and under 17s or in between. And I think that was the big thing that we tried to get across to all of our coaches. And thankfully, we've probably 55 coaches now. Every single one of them have started their coaching courses. Some of them are on, pushed on a bit more, which is naturally what happens. But they're all at a level now that the coaching badges are relevant to the age they're coaching. But at the start, that wasn't as easy to get done. And there was a few kind of difficult conversations as such. But you have to just stick to what you're doing. So if you want the coaches qualified and doing the FAI courses, and you want the teams, having certain standards, you just have to reinforce it. Because when I first started there, there'd be teams that were doing brilliant stuff, some of the coaches, and they're still in the club now, doing fantastic stuff with their teams. But there was teams that, you get in and you could be doing the under-8s, the next thing you see under 13s running around the pitch doing 3 laps around the whole Astro, then they go into a training game. Like, there's no coaching in that. That's just basically showing up for a 5-a-side or 7-a-side. So that sort of changing that the stuff that sort of changes at the start was the difficult part. But you just have to stick to what you envision for the club, and not everyone's going to agree with you. That's fine. But if you know what you want to do and push on, you just have to stick to that. But yeah, the big thing is people just don't like change. But then when stuff is done in regards to regrading players, if it's a player going up for level or down, people understand that it's ultimately to help the child. Like my brother was in Corduff, he was under 11s and he was in a 3rd team, and eventually moved down to the 4th team because that was his level. But I'd go watch the training session if he's in a 1st team or a 4th. I wouldn't care once he's happy on the pitch. And even now, like he's actually not in Corduff anymore. It's just tough for him getting from Navan, but he's in Toro on our home club. And once he's happy doing his football, that's what I care about. Which is you'd be hoping that's all parents care about for their own kids as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, keeping players in the game is very important. Corduff and the Blanchetown area in general is obviously a huge catchment area. There's clubs, if I'm not mistaken, there's at least 6 in and around, I would say, a 10-kilometre, maybe 5-kilometre radius.
Yeah.
With Blanchetown and how football is operating there, is it very much along the lines of a community-based club with potential for, let's say, younger players who are kicking on into potentially National League, is Corduff a home for both sides of the coin, or would you lean more towards community versus, let's say, preparing for National League?
No, I think now, like, Corduff is that we want to have, I wouldn't call it elite side at underage level, but you want to have a higher level, and then you want to have a middle of the road level, and then a lower level to cater for all kids. So definitely a community aspect of that. But like the way I would look at it is when they start under eights, we want the team in at least red or blue level. Like, I know they're done by colours, but they're graded. Then they get to under 10s, you want them in A1, under 11s again, this Division 1 or 2, and then when you get to under 12s, you want them in Premier or Major. Because then you have a team that's in a high level position, and then it's important that you have kids that are, in probably Division 4 or 5 and then Division 9 or 10, because all the kids, you're catering for all aspects of the community. But I think as a preference for me, I know people say it's for the fun of the game and all this, but ultimately, like, you want your club to be pushing on at a high level and then catering for everyone. I'd never be in a position to just say, yeah, Corduff wants to go Premier at all levels and that's it, because like, you want to cater for everyone. But definitely the goal of a club of Corduff is to push them towards Premier, Major level, and then cater for the whole community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a home for all players.
Home for all, yeah.
Yeah, because I think I wouldn't say clubs have it intentionally, but there's definitely some clubs that would have like badges as being perceived as like Premier only, or let's say they only have one team per age group. And this isn't just for National League clubs, this is also for like what I would have considered, let's say, community clubs, just or cater for all ages clubs, pushing a different agenda to actually what they wear. And do you find that a lot of clubs compete for players specifically because they want to have a clear progression all the way, or do you feel like within even just the Blanchardstown area, it's a little bit more along the lines of we're all kind of in the same boat here, just trying to provide teams for players?
Yeah, like I've definitely been in clubs before where I've been in a club like similar to what you just said there, which kind of just wants the elite players. I was coaching a major team before I had a Premier above me, and I would always want our kids to push on, even though there was no that much level within the two teams. There was one particular kid in our team, but we made him the captain within a month. Never had looking with the Premier team, kind of dipped in and out of training, and he's the only one out of that age group now that have gone on to be an Irish international at underage, and he's playing the highest level of National League team wise out of that age group. And I think that's some clubs probably lose players because of that, because they're looking for an unbelievable player right there and then, whereas they don't look at the lower level teams in a club. And I think in Blanchardstown, definitely all the clubs, they have really good setups for a lower level, middle of the road, and then some of them have good higher level setups. And I think it's definitely in Blanchardstown something that the clubs aim towards. That you can kind of see with all of them kind of what way the clubs are running. They're definitely all going the right direction, but there is some clubs that just want Premier, and I think that's okay, but I think you do lose a lot of players in between the cracks by doing that, because you can have a kid, like, for example, our own 9 group next year are going Sundays. 3 or 4 of the kids in that team that actually go to church. Again, like, we'll probably have to, 2 of our own 9s play Sunday or Saturday now. We will probably keep one Saturday so them lads can still play in the club. But if that was a club they just want the Premier only and they're going away Premier on a Sunday, or 09, sorry, they'll lose them players. So you have to be smart with it. Like, even with us, like, we've Tyrrellstown not too far of us with the GA. Our under 8s and our under 9s now playing a Sunday, because like 7 of the lads play GA, so we don't want to give them a choice. But when they come to ultimately under 12s, we want to be a team in Premier or Major. We'll have to say to the lads, right, you can obviously still play in the club, but which one are you going with? But I think it's up. You have to be respectful of other sports as a club and people's circumstances. Like, if you just say this is what we're doing and that's it, and not take that in consideration, you're going to lose good coaches, good players, and that's a mistake I think some clubs make.
Yeah, it's a good point. Definitely. That makes a lot of sense, I have to say. With the coaching aspect, when you were saying there about getting coaches on coaching badges, do you have regular one-on-ones, meetings, or assessments with all staff, or how do you actually manage the director to manage your role?
So now, like, at this, we had one in September to kind of start the season one. We do an in-house coaching session then in October. We're going to do one in January, so it'll actually be next week. That's what all the coaches, where you bring them in, so it'll be like 5 aside, 7 aside, 9-a-side, 11-a-side together. Sorry, 5-a-side and 7-a-side together, and then the 9 and 11-a-side.
Nice.
We have them teed up for probably 3 a year, like of all them in together. But individually throughout the week, I'll go around to the particular teams and put sessions on with them, and pop in where I can.
Yeah.
But we'll probably gear towards probably doing maybe 3 coach ed nights, kind of from September to December, and then maybe 5 from say January to July, with because there'll obviously be a month off, but that's probably what we're going to gear towards this year, because it's difficult trying to get the coaches up at all on the one night when their teams are training. So
yeah, of course.
we might try and do a bit more over the summer months as well, when there's more daylight and more flexibility, because in the Astros during the year, teams are obviously under certain training times. So if you blanket call off the Astro, you might be calling all the sessions off for other teams, that kind of way. So we definitely do 4 coach eds a year, but you'd be in with the coaches week in, week out. Like I have a WhatsApp group with all the coaches in the club, obviously, and then with each specific team. So like if it's under 8s, I'd have the 2 sets of under 8s and me, under 9s, 10s, 11s, and up to under 17s, 18s. It's just for me, so I can check in if they need any help or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how we generally do it. And then the FAI courses, we at the start of the season, we'd say to the lads, if you're under 8s or under 9s, you have to have your PDP1 done by being now or May. If you're going up to under 10s, you have to have your PDP2 done, then PDP3, and so on. I would always encourage that. Like I was at clubs before when my badges, like a Trim Celtic in fairness, paid for all my badges, but I was at certain clubs that they don't pay for your badges, and if you're giving up your time, and you have to buy your own gear or pay for your own badges, you need to be giving something back to the coaches. So that's in Corduff was the one thing before I started, was that the badges had to be paid for and they had to be given coaching gear. Because I think for the amount of hours a coach gives up week in, week out, like it's not just the training and matches, it's the organised and all that sort of stuff. You need to be giving something back for them. So there's no cap on what Corduff coaches can do. If someone wants to go and do their B license or A license, they can go and do it, because it's obviously improving the club.
Great. Jeez, I wish more clubs were like that. I never got a badge paid for by a club.
Yeah, it's like my dad was the same. Like he'd nothing paid for, and it was something that I was always saying. Like he was driving from Navan to a particular club in Dublin, and paying for like first aid, PDP 1, 2, and he'd done them years ago. But he'd redo them, and wasn't given anything back. And I was saying, like, why are you doing that? Like, but he was with a particular team at the time. Didn't want to leave that to come to Corduff and finish the season and stuff. But like, it's just a small thing for a club. Like, and even the start of the season, if you're budgeting correctly, like add it into your costs, like your running costs, your coach ed, your coach gear, away trips. Like we've a team going down to Kerry in the All Ireland on Sunday, so all the boys are paid, their hotel is paid for, their bus is paid for, their food is paid for, because that's within a budget. If a team gets there, that's just basic stuff. Like if you turn around throughout the year and said, Morgan or Gary, your kids are coming on this trip, by the way, you've 500 quid there at the hotel, and they're going to be looking at you like not everyone has that, so
no way, not supposed to be.
Yeah, you need to be smart with that. Like, and
Do you find coaches then, because we've discussed this before, where it's like in Ireland, I'm sure it's in other countries where, but we obviously see it firsthand here, the whole idea of like the volunteer mindset, where you're being asked to do something, and if you don't do it, well then you're out of a club or and whatnot. So pretty much what you were describing there was what you guys do is amazing, is covering costs and whatever, because again, coaches aren't being paid to be there. All of them are pretty much volunteers. That is a lot of workload on top of all the expenses. So do you find that a lot of coaches, when they're asked to do something, especially when they're young and quite malleable, that they're almost being like overworked and told you have to do this, you have to do that, but it's all just from a volunteer mindset? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like definitely. Like I went, I was asked a few things over the years, and I was a coach, and going to say 3 different sessions and 2 games on a weekend for one of the clubs I was at, and you're giving up 5 days of your time and stuff, and you have to be giving back something. Like, so if your coaching badge is paid for and you want to push on with a coaching career, or you just want to get on the ladder, if that's paid for, that's a nice thing to aim for. If you're getting a gear, like when I started coaching Shamrock Rovers, I remember I got a text off Shane Robbins and it was like, your gear's in the club ready for you. So you had 2 tracksuits there, rain jacket, gloves, hat, scarf, like just stuff like that. You're like, geez, I'm in a proper club now, whereas other clubs before, you had to pay for your gear. So if you got like a rain jacket, tracksuit, big massive, manager's jacket, your bill could be like 200 quid. Whereas if a club just put that in their budget, like it's the small things like that, giving it to a coach. If you can give them a tracksuit, they're always delighted getting a new tracksuit. If they're getting their badges paid for, it's one less expense, and yeah, it's something that has to be done. And we sometimes have arguments in the club of coaches. Sometimes it's like, I was told I can't get a tracksuit. I'm here 2 years. You always get them. You get them new ones, because you can't have the same tracksuit for 2 or 3 years. But small stuff like that. I think when coaches get it, they appreciate it. And yeah, I just think that's again experiences I learned from. I was in a club, and you don't feel valued if you're paying for all your coaching gear, you're paying for your badges, and if you're working, a job during the week and you're starting out. Generally, people that start the badges are kind of just out of college or in their job that they're kind of seeing what they're doing. They don't have a whole lot of money, or they might be at a later stage in life and they have a lot of kids. They don't quite have the money to pay for the badges. You need to be able to support them if they're giving up their time. That's one thing I don't understand why clubs don't do that, because it should just be a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Do you have to plan? Obviously, you do have to plan. And what is the strategy around planning that in a budget for a club? I'm not too sure how involved you would be in it, but I'm sure you're involved in the general strategy and process around that. Is there like initiatives that you go to in order to have that budget available per team in the club?
Yeah, so like we wouldn't known from kind of previous years that like one of the coaches' gears, one of the years it was like $6,500 or $7,000. So you have to know what you have to spend on that. And your coach had, if you're doing like we're doing PDP 1s, 2s and 3s and 70s, them courses are roughly about 50 quid max, and then they go from like 35 up. So you probably set aside maybe 4,000 or 5,000 for that, because some of them have done all the badges. But yeah, that's how we'd kind of do it. Like in the club, we'd set out, say it's $5,000 for coach ed or whatever, and if you go over it, it's not the big deal. It just comes out of the club savings, and then next year you'd say, right, well, our coach ed was maybe 4,000 we budgeted for, we actually spent 6, so you just add it in next year. But yeah, it would just come out of the club savings. And that's kind of, you learn as you, like Sean Ryan that does the finance, like you learn as you go on. Like, there's never an issue with someone like he's never once rang me and said, Billy here wants to do this course, like, we don't have the money. You get it done, and then for next year. And that's the way Vernus to work with a lot of things.
Yes, that's fantastic. Recently, I would say Corduff were in the news because I saw it twice about potentially getting rid of a pitch. Has there been any updates with regards to what that situation is, and what was the potential implications if the pitch was to go?
Yes, just actually this evening on the way in here, I got a call to say that the council are actually keeping pitch 2 now. They're not opening up an alleyway onto a cul-de-sac, which was closed years ago for antisocial behaviour. So what they done in November was they released plans to take away pitch 2, put in trees and a walkway through the pitch. Open up an alleyway, and as I said, it was closed 20 years ago due to antisocial behaviour and stuff. Residents wanted it closed, and in the new plans they wanted to get rid of pitch 2 and open that. And the implications would have been us losing kind of 8 to 10 teams. That pitch is used every single week. Like, we've pitch 1 and 2, and every week they're used. We've the Astro. In the plans they were doing a new Astro, which is great, proper 11-a-side one. Our one at the moment isn't. It's a 9-a-side, so that was a good part of the plan. But in doing that, we were kind of told, well, you have the Astro there, so you don't really need to pitch 2, whereas we do need it. We do, matches there every weekend throughout the summer months, so when the brighter evenings come in, all the teams train out there to keep the cost down from the Astro. You have summer tournaments, all that sort of stuff. Like, you have probably 4 tournaments a year we run in Corduff, and they're all on pitch 2. Friendly games during the summer, pitch 1 and 2, they're all on that. Like, and we actually have another pitch in Damastown which we use as well. So we've 3 11-a-side pitches that we use and the Astro. The implications down the line would have just capped us taking in numbers as a club, stopped the expansion, because we went from October 2019 with 17 teams, like we've I think 32 now. So it's nearly not far off double, and that's only going to grow because we've the girls football now in the club as well. So the implications for that would have been stopping us taking numbers, releasing players, and then just stopping growth in general. So it's good news they've decided not to do that, because and that's something like I'd appreciate, like, because I was very obviously annoyed about it and vocal the last couple of months, because I just I knew the knock-on effect it would have in the club.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you had a voice to stand up, because I think potentially a lot of clubs might get walked over when they probably shouldn't have. My question really is, because all I saw was the outcry to stop it. How does something like that even happen? Because my assumption, this is what I gathered from reading various articles and tweets, was that essentially the club were told that this is the plan. They didn't even consult what happened. So how does that even go about, where we're just going to rip out a pitch and put in access to an alleyway again?
Yeah, so I think it's a lack of disconnect from the community.
Yeah.
a lack of research, obviously, a lack of communication with the people that are involved. So residents of Edgewood Lawn, the estate that they were going to open up, obviously the football part of it, Corduff, and the residents of Corduff included with that for the park plans. I think if you had spoken to all these, Corduff, the residents beforehand, even if it was door knocking or just there's a sports centre over the huge hall where we do the awards every year. If you just done a consultation that evening, or one of the evenings, and said this is what we're thinking, for the park, this is what we're planning to do, how would everyone feel about that? You would get a fairly quick idea of we're for that, or no, definitely not, or you get the third option, which would be, well, that wouldn't work, but here's what we would think. And it wouldn't take a whole lot to do that. It would just be talking to people in a hall and the key stakeholders and invite all the local residents, and that's how I would approach it if I was doing that sort of role, because I think sending something out with plans and an online submission and saying do this this is what we're planning, and if you want to object, do that online. It's fairly
just screams disconnect, doesn't it?
Joe, it's this gonna sound ridiculous, but it screams like fear. It's very simple to put a plan out there behind like a digital showcase and have no one to report it, because there's no one physically. Like, for example, if that was me to come in, a part of county council, and I was throwing that out in front of everyone, I'd be a bit terrified of the backlash as well, especially if I didn't fully believe in it, so I'd say a lot of that is fear, where they're trying to throw out a plan and hoping that there's not a reaction. But obviously when you've got a club and a community so big, there's going to be a backlash if it's a negative for the area. It's as you were saying now, I think they'd just be terrified of doing it. Not that that's correct either, because you would get the immediate feedback though. That is very important, that you get, exactly like you said, the top stakeholders in the area and then all the local residents. You'll get a fairly conclusive idea of what the story is once you were to throw something like that out to a hall, like you said.
Like, you have to give bad news as good as you give good news.
100%.
I think just a simple thing of communication. If we ever have an issue in a club, but it's a coach or a parent or anything, like the one thing I would do, and I always do, or between two coaches, you get everyone in a room and you would say, what's happening here? How can we improve it and move on? Or you get to the core of the issue quicker than, ringing people or texting, or that's my preference. So if it's something like this, I think, the fact that they're not doing it now is brilliant, but I think hopefully they use it as a learning curve if they're, planning to do this stuff in the future, because it's not a good way of going about your business. It needs to be, all cards out on the table, and a proper consultation, not just put it up online. Even when we were doing the submissions, like the amount of texts I got from people that had sent it on to their parents or relatives, and they were kind of older, not really into, emails, usernames, all this sort of stuff, trying to create accounts. And why it's done that way, I don't know. I have a fair idea why it's done that way, but you can't be asking people that are older to create accounts, emails, takes 5-6 minutes, do your submission, and the amount of questions we got on that was unbelievable. Which is understandable, because I'm not really that tech savvy, but it's difficult for people, instead of just clicking the button yes or no, I agree with the plans or I don't. It's like it's harder than it's made out harder to do. It's made harder to do, I think.
High barriers.
A lot of friction there, isn't it?
And like if you just had it in the first stage, just done a consultation, this is what we're planning, this is what we want to do. Do you have any objections? Now's the time to do it. Obviously, then you can do your online one, but you have a fair gauge of the room before you go get an architect to do plans of a park, and more surveyors out and that sort of stuff. And I think that's hopefully a lesson learned, because I just found like since November it was a huge kind of time wasting exercise. It took up a lot of our time that could have been spent doing more valuable stuff around the club, and it took away from the whole idea that we actually want a clubhouse in Corduff Park. Not like we had said that originally. We actually wanted a third pitch last year. So we'd inquired about that, and we kind of were probably so upset about the pitch and concentrating that we nearly forgot that we actually want to try and get a clubhouse in the park, because it's a sports centre we have there that we don't really have the run of. So we kind of wanted our own little thing. We only have a little club shop now. It's tiny, and you'd want something slightly bigger. So we were hoping to liaise with the council on that to see if we can get more of a sustainable kind of building for ourselves.
Yeah, of course. It's not the first time I've seen Corduff as a football club involved in, I would say, big strategic moves. Like, one of the most noble things that I remember about Corduff was the shift from the NDSL to the DDSL. Overall, in the last couple of years, well, first of all, actually, why was the main reason to actually shift teams to the DDSL? And then secondly, how have you found that transition period over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so that was done before I was in Corduff, but
Yeah.
I know why they done it. It was definitely for the quality of the leagues. No disrespect to the NDSL, but the DDSL is the bigger league, and it's a better standard of football, and I think that's I know that's why the club wanted to move towards that. And just the general organisation of it, and I think it's, that's the main reason that the guys made the move, and it's a move that's worked out really well. And it's something that Corduff will be saying in the DDSL, and especially since Mick Kennedy, the new general manager, took over last year in DDSL, and Barry Ferguson, director of football, and like Garbreen doing the social media, it's really pushed on, and I think the DDSL is only going to improve from here on out, and I think it's it's definitely going in a good direction.
And then my follow-up question was, do you think the Dublin area should specifically gear towards having a one governing body, or do you think it's a good idea to have split leagues?
For is an underage league?
Yeah, underage, yeah.
Well, I think it should be, in general, my view of it should be like English football, like a tiered structure. So it should be obviously National League, then DDSL, then if you want to put a lower league in, I think more tiered structure, like a pyramid one, would work better. I think it should be all ultimately working towards the one goal. I think even in the Underage League of Ireland, the thing I don't understand is that obviously the standards with coaches are very good, the players very good, but some clubs could actually compete in the underage because they're not playing in stadiums week in, week out. There's no licensing for the Underage League of Ireland, so I don't understand why a tiered system wouldn't work. Because say if Corduff or Kevin's or Moctis or whatever club you're talking about are producing really good players week in, week out, or year in, year out, why can they not then push on? I think that is something that I would like to see eventually in the future, that if you are starting, if it's say Division 7, that if you push up as an underage team, you can eventually get to the National League. I think it's something that you could work towards, because they're not all playing in stadiums. A lot of them playing in nice Astros or nice grounds, but so are Corduff and so are other clubs, and I think it's something that could definitely improve Ireland as a whole, football wise. People might agree or disagree with that, but I think it's something that you could definitely do. It's something that obviously, I know Kevin's were in it for like a year or so, and then weren't in it, but like Kevin's are really, really good club, could probably compete very well in it. Well, no, probably they would compete very well in it, but it's a difficult one. But I think it's something that could be looked at. Like RO5 Group played a League of Ireland team a couple of years ago. Manager organising a friendly with myself. I said to our manager, he's like, yeah, definitely play them, and he was like, oh, would you be alright to play us? And I was like, yeah, their 205 team was very strong. We ended up beating them 4-1. And we're looking, saying, why can't you, it'd be great if Corduff could push on, but it's really your job now as a schoolboy club is get to the players of a certain level to go National League, and then that's all you can do. Whereas if it was changed, which it might not be, but if it was changed, you as Corduff could grow as a club, and obviously you're not going to get Corduff into Senior League of Ireland. It's just not going to happen, but there's no, nothing stopping, underage. That's my probably opinion of it with the leagues. If you do like a tiered structure, like they have like League 2, 1, Championship, Premiership, it's definitely something for underage that you can lean towards or gear towards.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think I've seen, I wouldn't say flirting with it, but definitely the biggest criticism of that was that some teams wouldn't be able to provide senior football or like a clear full pathway. My argument was always, well, the pathway starts at 14s.
Yeah.
So technically it's not a full, only some clubs can say we actually have slots from since you're 5 years of age all the way to like a pro contract. I saw the bridge of the gap when clubs outside of the League of Ireland first teams were actually given licenses. So for example, like leagues, like the Kildare League, for example, have XYZ teams across the various leagues. So one thing that I always found, and I've came from both sides of the coin, from both the National League and also schoolboy football in NDSL and DDSL. So I've seen a good bit of it. One thing that I always found, it was always very much us against them and then them against us on all sides of the coin. And I was all in on whatever side of the coin I was on. Kind of back to what Corduff were like with the council. It all boils down to a real lack of honest, clear and concise communication across all channels. And this is something that I've definitely taken a step back from and really observed, is like there actually is a lot of untapped experience in underage clubs, who I think people forget were the main pipeline of our best international teams as well. At the same time, football itself has definitely evolved over the last couple of years to the point where I remember it was very difficult to get a B licensed coach anywhere. Now they're, I wouldn't say abundant, but it's, you definitely know at least 2 or 3 within your close circles now. And I don't want to say the gap is getting bigger in terms of clubs can offer 5 nights a week S&C coaches and physios, and then the other clubs are going to go by the wayside. My fear is that the bridge between them might get potentially a little bit bigger to the point where a tiered system might be extremely difficult to catch up on again. But I think it goes back to what you were saying there about even the player that you had in your major team who got capped underage. You know, what's the net to catch them as they fall and to propel them back up and stuff like that. So yeah, it is it's definitely something that I think we need to pile resources into, but at the same time, like, there really isn't a lot of spare resources anywhere from governing bodies all the way to individual clubs. I think sometimes the best thing to do is really to focus primarily on, like, what is my immediate role within my immediate club. And I think that's really the only way that you can actually bring significant value.
I don't, like, you know, I wouldn't ever concentrate on anything now to do football in Ireland, if it's for the league or, you know, the FAI or whatever. Like, the role I want to do is just Corduff and concentrate on what we can do for the coaches and the players. Anything outside that is nothing really to do with me. And, you know, as much as I'd like to see certain things happen, I'm not a decision maker. I don't work in the DDSL or like the FAI or any sporting bodies. So I just, you know, do my role to the best I can, and anything outside of that is nothing really to do with me. And I think there is a lot of good work being done now by, you know, the leagues, DDSL, NDSL, FAI, and I think football in Ireland is, as much as it's criticised, I think it is kind of, like, a lot of the underage international teams do very well. But I definitely do think that there needs to be better infrastructure for what you do with the players, as you said, falling through the cracks, and how to deal with that. Because I've had it from some of our players that have went to National League, some cases released after 3 or 4 months. And when that player goes and does the picture with the club and the jersey and sign of the registration, they feel like they've made it. And it's a brilliant feeling for the players. But we've dealt with some players now that have been released, and, you know, you could have 14, 15-year-olds saying, I'm not good enough for this or that. And that part is probably where you need to be more in line, because I think that's a extremely difficult thing, and it's no one's fault, but it's definitely something, the gap needs to be bridged, because you don't want to turn kids off football just because they haven't made it at a certain age. You know, like Jamie Vardy is a perfect example. Like, you know, didn't play Premier League till he was late 20s. So it's probably trying to deal with the welfare of that child and how you can help them bounce back, because everyone will have setbacks. But I think it's definitely something we need to improve in this country for sure.
And in the interim phase, so even without a tiered system, let's say that there is this island of National League football, which we considered, well, it is like the pinnacle of underage football in the country at the moment. How does Corduff manage their relationship with the National League clubs, and how do you help those premier players that are within the club to potentially move on to the next step in that journey?
Yeah, so we would be partnered with Shamrock Rovers. So basically, the aim of that partnership is to get players over to Shamrock Rovers to play National League, and then ultimately play with the first team. So not all of our players get picked to go over to Shamrock Rovers, and some have over the years. But ultimately, like, our job, I would have a lot of good relationships with a lot of National League clubs, and if a player comes to us, by the time they get to kind of 09s, like under 14s, so now the 2010 age group, so kind of even the year before that, 2011s, the parents and the kids want to be getting them kind of to, you know, National League clubs. So it's our job to have good relationships with all the clubs, because I know they're not all going to get into Shamrock Rovers. So you might get 1 out of 5 or 6, or you could get 2 or 3 out of 6, but it's about having relationships with all of them. So a lot of League of Ireland clubs I'd have good relationships with, and, you know, I'd know that I could nearly tell the player, yeah, we'll send you over there for a couple of training sessions, because I know that the person on the other end of the phone will come back and say, yeah, no problem. And they will give, in some of the clubs, just good feedback that, yeah, we think he's ready, or, you know, we think he or she needs a bit more work on this. And then we go back to the player and deal with the player and parent on, you know, whatever they need to improve, or if they're, you know, that club feels like they're ready to go, you know, straight away, then well and good. We'll, you know, wish the player well. But yeah, it's definitely, you need to have relationships with all the clubs, because just, if a player won't get into, say, a top League of Ireland team, they make it into middle of the road or kind of a lower one, and it's, about what you can do for the player. And I think it's important for clubs to have good relationships for all of them, because I know years ago it's kind of like, well, nationally we don't agree with that, but like ultimately, like, it's a higher standard of football. It improves football in the country, and all the kids that want to play at a higher standard want to go and play in it. So you need to be able to support them in doing that. And if you're on the other side and you don't agree with like a national league or something like that, like, you'd probably be, going against yourself, because the kids are going to want to go there and play anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to get them the best move we can when they want to go and support them.
Mm-hmm.
We'd never be one bit, resentful because the players with us from under 7s and under 13s they go. It's not like there's a boy, Abby, that signed for St. Pat's 2010s last week. So tonight at the club, his manager Morris is presenting him with a plaque. Thanks for your service to Corduff, best luck in League of Ireland, and he gives them a good send off, because we want the kids to go on and play at a high level and do well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always delighted when they do, because it's good for the coaches. They've done a good job getting the player to that level. His teammates having him week in, week out. So it's always a happy thing for us when we see a player pushing on. As much as you don't like losing them now, the kid has like 50 goals in the last 2 seasons. Like, it's like, the manager at the end of the day knows that his kid is pushing on, and he's a lot of other good kids in his team. So yeah, you have to be supportive of the kids. And
yeah, evident again, strong communication channels are very important. And look, from being in the National League as well, there's nothing better than having a direct point of contact with the club that you can honestly have a chat with, because even as well, I've known that there's some clubs that do it very well now that even aren't in, I would say, contractual like partnership agreements, where if, let's say, they're releasing a couple of players, that they will instantly, before they even tell the player that they're getting released, they'll contact the club and let them know that these players aren't going to have a home next year with the National League club. They're basically giving full recommendation that you should be definitely taking in this player, making sure that they have space and stuff, and then actually having pathways for players from the National League back into underage grassroots. I wish all clubs were like that, as we were talking about, like the net system of actually being able to bounce players to a level that actually fits them and suits them. But like, I think if directors of football had open conversations and good channels with various clubs, not just one, and pushing certain agendas, then there's definitely a route towards better development, more players playing, and a bounce back system. As you said, like, welfare is probably, I'm not gonna say probably, it is the single most important thing with young players and young minds.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. Like, I'm not loyal to any club bar Corduff and the kids that play in Corduff. And it's ultimately the best decision that you have to look after is the kid, because at the end of the day, it is the kid's welfare. So you have to, be, he or she is at the foremost of your thinking. Like, you can't think of any other factors or contractual agreements or any of that. It's always what's good for the kid. And yeah, it would be great if more kids that, or more clubs when they're releasing kids, kind of had that process. I know some of them do, but yeah, maybe difficult from staff wise. But it's definitely it's good for the kids, because I see it each year. Like, if a kid got released, they're going around to just League of Ireland clubs, they're not getting in, they're struggling, and it's not good for the kid when they're being told having their door closed every 2 or 3 clubs. So it's definitely something that needs to improve, and it's hopefully, I think it will. There's a lot of good people appointed in these clubs now, so it's definitely will in the future, I think.
Yeah, one thing that I've seen as a narrative, we're very lucky. I mean, we work with over 1,000 players a year from 5 until professional, so we see like a good wide range of players. One thing that I've seen as a narrative, just talking about players from 5 to 18, primary focus on 10 to 13, so going into National League, a lot of the whispers that I hear is always, it's National League or nothing. Have to get into National League, even if it's a case where my current team in my current league would actually compete every single week against this National League club I want to get into. I think young players and parents too, they're playing status games. My child plays for a National League team, I play for a National League team, and I don't know if this is something that Corduff have thought about, but I wouldn't even say it's just primarily down to clubs as well. But do you feel like that is the narrative as well, that once it hits 14s, that really is the be all and end all? Like, how do clubs even manage that communication channel of, what, it actually is a good system back here, you just need to drop whatever conceiving ideas you have?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's the end if they don't make it under 14. So obviously you have 15s, 17s, 19s, and then senior football. Now I do think some people do think that. Like I had a parent, it was 2014 born, so that's currently an under 10 team. So this kid was played under 9s at Corduff, and the parent was asking me to get this kid into Shamrock Rovers for National League at under 9s. So I was like, he doesn't start that for 5 years. Like, you know, they do an emerging talent program where they might start at say under 11s and get them in for under 11s and 12s, which is fine. But this parent was really consistent about getting him in, and I was like, that's not like physically possible to get him into, like, he's not that age. And the parent in question, you know, emailed me a spreadsheet saying he didn't agree with what I said to him, and included the kids' training goals and goals throughout the year, total like 98 or something, and said his kid is ready to push on to next level. But like, I think ultimately that kid now is, you know, going to be constant pressure at home if he doesn't get to National League under 14s that he's failed, predominantly from the parent. Whereas if the parent was, we tried to obviously educate him and tell him, like, listen, there's 14s, 15s, 17s, 19s at the time. But I do think some coaches or parents will be of the mindset, if they don't make it at 14s, that's it. Where it's not the case. Like, we've had some players that went to St. Pat's at under 17s, and are still there now, but they weren't picked at 14s or 15s, so it's definitely not the end of the road. But it's ultimately up to the players, and, you know, that they keep working hard, and that the coaches are, you know, doing their job with them, and then it will fall into place if it's going to happen. And if it's not going to happen, then there's unfortunately nothing you can do about it. But there's nothing stopping them playing higher level Leinster Senior League in Ireland, or, you know, maybe even being picked further down the road for senior football. But yeah, I do think there's definitely a persona with certain maybe parents or coaches or players that if you don't make it at 14s, that's it. And we've seen it from some kids like that, you know, went for trials, they didn't get it, and, you know, they come back all upset, but they just have to get up and go again. Like, that's just life. You know?
Big time, yeah.
But it's tough, obviously, to explain it to a kid that, you know, has probably been gearing towards that, and, you know, they're on Instagram, they see other people getting signed for clubs, and if they haven't been, probably panic setting in. I don't think it's something you can change, though. I think it's just it's difficult.
As you said, like, deal with the waves.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good point. I think on a concluding note as well, what would you like to see happen in the next couple of years between even just what you want to do personally and what Irish football can be in the next couple of years?
Me personally, I don't know. Like, it's very difficult to work obviously I'd have to work full time in football. But in Ireland, from kind of sustainability point of view, if you have a family or kids and bills, it's very difficult to do. So I kind of always started my coaching journey with I first started with trim, just being thrown in. But then as I done my badges, I liked it. But now that, like, I have a house and stuff, I wouldn't probably go to the UK now unless you did, you know, a really good job offer. But it's very difficult to do. So I suppose just keep doing what I'm doing and kind of see what happens, because my career, I'm lucky enough, my career is a good career I'm in as well. So I don't really have a plan as such. Of course, eventually down the road, I want to coach at a higher level. You know, possibly, you know, National League, League of Ireland, Senior League of Ireland, some of the Ireland international underage teams. That's what I'd be gearing towards eventually. But at the moment, I'm really happy in Corduff, but that's probably where I'd aspire to be. And in football in Ireland, I suppose, you know, probably bridging the gap from the underage coming into the senior team, because obviously we haven't had, like, you know, much success with the senior team in recent years. I think there's a lot of good players coming through, but it's probably having, you know, people involved in that. Like, you know, Stephen Kenny obviously was the senior team manager, but I think having someone like him involved in producing the players would be good in a role, because he was brilliant at getting the players through from under 21s, and I think having people like him involved in the FEI in whatever role, you know, for producing players would be good, because the more knowledgeable football people you have, obviously the better football players you have coming through. So I suppose, yeah, bridging the gap if you can between the underage and senior, and hopefully competing in tournaments, because it's, at the moment, it's difficult, it's bleak. Like, you know, you're probably the Euros, like, probably the best summer everyone's had in years, and then, you know, you haven't been away, you know, in 8 years at any tournaments. And like, I go to every single Ireland match at home, and the hope you go in with to the hope you come out with is completely different. Like, but I think as a nation, we're lucky. Like, if we get a win, it's just the way it is. We're not one of the top teams, but hey, you know, I'd hope the gap is kind of bridged, and, you know, you're competing in tournaments again. And yeah, it's just a case that I'm getting, you know, a manager now and kind of kicking on, and it's difficult though. It's hard for them at the moment.
No, it is. Hope is our our only good fortune at the minute.
Yeah.
Any concluding notes, Morgan?
No, not really. That was really good. Very, very good. It's always interesting to hear, obviously, the differing opinions. Everyone is context dependent where they are at a club, and you're obviously doing a fantastic job in a very, very good club in a great area. Obviously, we know the area well now, being there pretty much every week. And the area itself, like, there's just so many good players, and to hear and see people what they're doing, because again, a lot of what you'll do, it will dominate. It could be a full-time role. It will dominate your life, but not a lot of people hear about it, the struggles of it, and obviously the positives of it. Again, it's very easy to look at the bleak side of it and the negatives, but there's so many positives that go with it. So it's good to hear someone like yourself and speak so nicely about it. So that was really good to have you on. It was a great conversation. And again, as always, we say, we appreciate your time, because for anyone who doesn't know, we record these fairly late.
Yeah.
So it is another bit of your evening we're taking away. Like you could be doing anything else right now. So we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks a million for having me on. Really good.
No
Good chat.
problem at all.
Yeah,
Of course.
thanks, Alan.
Thank you for watching, listening. Good luck.